Welcome to the Olive Grove podcast, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
We are diving into Isaiah chapter 20 today.
Oh, yeah.
It's a chapter all about trusting God,
Mm-hmm.
even when times get a little bit rough.
Yeah.
We're looking at this chapter through an online study guide from My Christian Space.
Right.
And they really unpack things in a way that makes you think.
It's definitely one of those chapters that just makes you stop and think.
Yeah.
You see right from the beginning, God's communicating with Isaiah in this really unusual way.
Yeah.
And it really sets the tone for the whole theme of the chapter.
It's definitely not your everyday type of message.
Right.
I mean, we're talking about God telling Isaiah to walk around barefoot and naked for 3 years.
Exactly.
I mean, that's not something you just ignore, right?
And I think that's the point. It was designed to be this super powerful visual image.
Oh, wow.
The study guide points out that being barefoot was often a symbol of poverty,
Uh-huh.
and nakedness symbolized shame.
Right.
So it wasn't really about Isaiah literally being naked.
Yeah.
It was about creating this really stark image of what was to come.
It was like a living prophecy.
Yeah.
You know, like a walking billboard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it gets even more interesting when you think about the historical context.
Okay.
The study guide reminds us this was when Assyria was this huge power invading Israel.
Oh, right. Yeah.
The Philistine city of Ashdod had just fallen. There was just a lot of fear and uncertainty everywhere.
So you've got this backdrop of political chaos.
Right.
And then you've got Isaiah walking around barefoot and naked for 3 years.
Exactly.
What was God trying to tell everybody through all of this?
Well, if we dig a little deeper,
Yeah.
the study guide highlights that the number 3 often symbolizes God's will being played out here on earth.
Okay.
So Isaiah's 3 years of walking around
Yeah.
becomes this visual representation of the judgment that's coming.
Okay, so judgment.
Yeah.
But not on Israel this time,
Not this time.
but on Egypt and Cush.
Right.
Okay, so why that?
Well, the northern kingdom of Israel had allied with Egypt and Cush against Assyria.
Right?
So basically, they put their faith in these human alliances instead of God.
Almost like they were saying, we'll trust these other nations to protect us instead of relying on God.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where I think the real lesson comes in.
Oh, wow.
You see, it's easy for us to look back at these old stories and think, oh, they were so foolish to trust in those things.
Yeah.
But how often are we doing the exact same thing today?
That's such a good point. We might not be making alliances with foreign nations,
Mm-hmm.
but we put our trust in all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Our jobs, our money, our relationships.
Right.
All these things that can ultimately let us down.
Exactly. And that's where that image of being barefoot and naked really hits home.
Oh, yeah.
It's that feeling of being completely vulnerable, like you've
Wow.
been stripped bare of all your security blankets.
Like those moments when you just feel completely exposed and vulnerable.
Right. And
Yeah.
you're kind of forced to and confront where you've really placed your trust.
Makes you wonder, what are those barefoot and naked moments in our lives today?
That's a good question.
Yeah,
It's something to think about.
it is.
Because often it's in those moments of vulnerability when we realize just how much we need God.
Right.
It's like when we're stripped of everything else, we can finally see him clearly.
Wow. That's a powerful image.
Yeah, it is. And it's in those moments, when we're willing to be vulnerable like that.
Yeah.
Let go of our own control and just trust God's plan.
Right.
That's when we often experience the most growth.
It's like Isaiah walking around for those 3 years. I mean,
Right.
it must have been so strange and uncomfortable
Yeah.
and probably even embarrassing at times, but he still did it
He did.
because he trusted God.
And his obedience to God, even when it seems so bizarre, becomes this powerful example for us today.
Yeah.
We can choose to follow that same path,
Yeah.
embrace those moments of vulnerability, knowing that God is with us every step of the way.
Speaking of Isaiah's message, the study guide points out this really powerful quote from Isaiah 20.6.
Okay.
The people are seeing the consequences of their misplaced trust, and they cry out, "Look what happened to the people we fled to for help,
Right.
hoping they would rescue us from the king of Assyria.
Yeah.
How will we escape now?"
It's a pretty stark realization.
It is.
And this idea of misplaced trust isn't just some ancient history lesson,
Yeah.
It's something we see happening all the time, even today.
Right.
We can be so easily swayed by empty promises,
Mm.
whether it's from politicians or social movements or even just our own desires.
We're always chasing after these things that we think will bring us security and happiness, but ultimately they just leave us feeling empty.
Exactly. And that's why I think Isaiah's story is so important.
Yeah.
It reminds us that true peace and security can only come from trusting in God, or as the study puts it, trusting in Yeshua.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that even when things seem really bleak, even when we feel like we've hit rock bottom, God is still there.
Right.
He's still in control.
The study also makes this connection to the rider on the white horse in Revelation,
Oh, yeah.
suggesting that, appearances can be deceiving.
Right.
The rider might look like he's offering peace, but it's a false peace.
It's just like the peace that Egypt and Cush offered Israel.
Right.
It's a warning
Yeah.
against putting our faith in things that seem good on the surface,
Right.
but ultimately lack real substance.
Yeah.
It challenges us to look beyond the superficial
Mm.
and seek the true source of peace, which can only be found in God.
So Isaiah's act of walking around barefoot and naked,
Right.
it wasn't just about predicting the future.
No.
It was this powerful symbol of the consequences of misplaced trust and a call to put our faith in God alone.
And I think it goes even deeper than that.
Really?
I think it also speaks to the transformative power of vulnerability.
Oh, wow.
By stripping himself bare, literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
Isaiah demonstrated his complete reliance on God. He was willing to let go of everything
I like it.
to embrace the shame, the discomfort, because he knew that God would be faithful.
That's a really powerful image.
Yeah.
It makes me think, are we willing to be that vulnerable
Right.
in our own faith?
Yeah. Are we willing to let go of our pride, our need for control, and just surrender to God's plan?
It's a tough question.
It is a challenging question.
It is.
But I think the beauty of Isaiah's story is that it offers us not just a warning,
Yeah.
but an invitation. It's an
Yeah.
invitation to step out in faith, to embrace the unknown,
Right.
knowing that even when we feel exposed and vulnerable,
Mhm.
God's strength is made perfect in our weakness.
Yeah, it's like you got to lose yourself to find yourself.
Right, right.
And I think in this case, it's about losing ourselves and God surrendering to his will, even when it feels uncomfortable. Even when it seems a little bit crazy.
Yeah, and I think that's where we can find a really powerful takeaway for today,
Yeah.
Isaiah's willingness to be vulnerable, to do something that probably seemed ridiculous to everyone around him, is a testament to his faith.
Wow.
It's a challenge for us to think about what those walks of faith might be that God's calling us to today.
What do we need to let go of? What habits do we need to shed to fully embrace his plan for us?
Yeah, it's a question we're thinking about,
It is.
and it might lead to some pretty amazing discoveries.
Absolutely. And if you're interested in exploring these themes even further, I highly recommend checking out that study guide on Isaiah chapter 20 over at the My Christian Space website.
Yeah, it's a really valuable resource.
They have some really great insights over there.
They do.
As we wrap up our deep dive into Isaiah chapter 20,
Yeah.
let's remember that key takeaway, trusting in God above all else, even when we face difficult circumstances.
It's a message that can transform our lives if we're willing to let it.
Absolutely. And for everyone listening, as you go about your week,
Yeah.
I want to leave you with a thought-provoking question. What walk of faith is God calling you to today? What might you need to let go of in order to fully trust in him?
It's a question worth pondering,
It is.
one that could lead you to some pretty amazing places.
Make sure to subscribe to the Olive Grove podcast on YouTube. And for early access to all our deep dives, go to the My Christian Space website. They often have early drops available there.
They do.
Until next time, keep seeking forth alone and keep trusting in the one who holds it all together.